Restaurants and romance, empire and opera, fun, surprising experiences at every one of the more than 300 stops on the metro. My name is Lisa. I'm a writer and tour guide. I carry a Canadian passport, but all we'll need is a ticket for the metro system as I show you historic, inspirational, endlessly fabulous Paris. I'd like to share my love for this spectacular city with you, one stop after the next, by way of the exciting Paris metro system. So grab your French phrasebook and put on your walking shoes. We're going to Paris. Next stop, Bir Hakeim. As soon as you think of Paris, you picture the Eiffel Tower. So for today's show, we'll be visiting the Iron Lady and much more, too. The area around the iconic symbol of France is packed with fascinating things to see and do. I'll take you along one of my favorite market streets, visit a peaceful house of worship, check out a charming traditional puppet show, along with amazing places to eat and some of the most beautiful buildings in all of Paris. Welcome to Bir Hakeim Metro, an area that is best known for the Eiffel Tower, but there's all kinds of other little-known history here. Sure, there's the tower itself, but this area of Paris also holds ties to very important, very French moments in history. Bir Hakeim Metro is named for the Turkish fort in Libya, where the Free French held off German and Italian forces for 16 days during World War II. It was an important moment in the war, especially for the Army of Free France. By holding strong against repeated assaults of fearsome Axis attackers in panzer tanks, the Free French Army, many of whom were from colonies of France, showed themselves to be a formidable force as they answered the call to arms of General de Gaulle. Sharing in the tenacity of those brave defenders of Bir Hakeim is the Eiffel Tower itself. It was originally erected for the 1889 World's Fair and was supposed to be taken down after the celebrations were complete. Yet here she stands more than a century later. The iconic Eiffel Tower, symbol of Paris, symbol of France, was actually hated by the French when it was first put up in 1889. The French thought it was garish and ugly and called it the metal asparagus. They also joked that the only place that you were spared the sight of this incongruity in their city was in the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower, where at least you didn't have to look out at the view that was marred by this strange construction. Now, of course, everybody has to visit the Eiffel Tower. Some objected to what would be the world's tallest structure on the grounds that they thought the project would not be feasible. While others, including the renowned architect of the Paris Opera, Charles Garnier, held more artistic objections. They compared the huge tower to a hideous smokestack with proportions that would crush the existing works of architectural beauty in the city by its sheer scale and visual bulk. But Gustave Eiffel stuck to his plan, comparing the tower to the Great Pyramids in Egypt, asking, why would something that is admirable in Egypt become ridiculous in Paris? The tower was ready in time for the exhibition and immediately became a hit with the public, who flocked in great numbers to see the marvel for themselves. By the end of the exhibition, nearly 2 million visitors had paid to climb the tower. It was a hit. When you get to the Eiffel Tower, you have two choices. You can take the elevator. There's often a long line, though. So you can also walk up the stairs of the Eiffel Tower, and the line is usually shorter, so that's what I'm gonna do. The original design of the Eiffel Tower included elevators specially made to go up the curving legs of the tower and leave the space underneath clear of unsightly elevator shafts. But the finicky contraptions only worked for the first few days of the 1889 exhibition, so the vast majority of the people who visited had to head up to the first deck, the second deck, or all the way to the top by taking the stairs. Okay, first floor of the Eiffel Tower. The first thing you notice when you get here, other than the fabulous view from the first floor, is that just to the left, there is part of the original staircase that people used to walk up in 1889 to get all the way to the top of this tower. I can't imagine walking up the narrow staircase like this all the way up to the top in the outfit you wore in the 1889 era. Lots of skirt and little boots and a corset. I would never have made it, even to the first floor.
It's the first floor of the Eiffel Tower, but the walk up from ground level is over 300 steps. So if the climb doesn't take your breath away, it's a pretty safe bet that the view will.
Everyone dreams about getting to the top of the Eiffel Tower, but honestly, the view, even from the first floor, is spectacular. Looking out, you can see the École Militaire, the buildings of UNESCO, the beautiful park of the Champ de Mars. You get this magnificent view all over Paris. Just after World War II, the Americans actually set up a nightclub here on this level for their soldiers, while the soldiers helped Paris recover from the occupation. Nowadays, anyone can stop here, have a break, have a wonderful bite to eat. In fact, sometimes it's nice to just stay here and enjoy the view while your more ambitious friends and family keep going up to the top. So here we go, second floor of the Eiffel Tower.
It's another 300 plus stairs to climb from the first level of the tower up to the second. There are even more stairs that lead from there all the way to the top observation deck, but they aren't open to the public anymore, so you'll have to take the elevators to get to the summit.
Going up the stairs, I feel super healthy, especially because you can watch the elevators going up so much faster, crammed with people. And you get a glimpse of a model of how the elevator operator used to actually sit outside going up the elevators to run them on the Eiffel Tower.
The climb will keep you warm on a chilly day in northern France. And you'll see how the city's boulevards and monuments are laid out. At the top of the Eiffel Tower, the deck on the second level has the most beautiful views of Paris you will find anywhere, short of floating over the city in a hot air balloon. Far from being lighter than air, however, the tower is built with 7,000 tons worth of steel in the form of 15,000 individual pieces, held together with 2.5 million rivets, and covered with a fresh coat of paint applied by hand with brushes every 7 years.
Now, at this point, the tower's been repainted so many times, I wonder if it's mostly paint that's holding the whole thing up. The color changes also as you go up the tower. It's darker at the bottom and it becomes paler and more golden the higher up you go.
Now, speaking of the higher up you go, this is where I have to make a small confession. I'm just the tiniest bit terrified of heights. And the view from up here on the second deck of the Eiffel Tower is gorgeous enough for me. I'll let the camera crew head up to the very top so you can get a look for yourself. A trip to the top of the tower is an experience to remember, but for some, like me, it's just a little too thrilling an experience for a visit to the City of Light. We'll visit some more down-to-earth beauties in Paris right after this. We're in soaring, surprising, scintillating Paris.
and we're looking at some of the amazing things to see and do around the Bir Hakeim metro station. There's no shortage of good reasons to explore this neighborhood, and I've got just the way to make getting around a little easier. Now, the neighborhood around Bir Hakeim is actually very spread out. The Champ de Mars is a huge park. The gardens around the Eiffel Tower are very big. And the nicest way to get around the neighborhood is actually to rent a bike. And Fat Tire does all kinds of bike tours. And you can also just rent a bike for the afternoon, which is what I'm going to do. I arrived at Fat Tire on a bright spring day, and the helpful staff were all hard at work assembling a new shipment of bicycles to be ready for the season. It's a busy time of year for this company, but Sadie agreed to take a few minutes away from pumping up tires to tell me a little bit about Fat Tire bike tours.
It's a great thing to do with family.
The Fat Tire bike tours, they've been going on how long?
Started in May of 1999. Yeah.
And what was the inspiration? Do you know why?
Actually, the CEO of the company was in Paris, and all of his friends would come to visit him, and he realized that the best way to get around was by bike. And there really wasn't any other bike tour at the time, so he said, you know what, I'm going to start this bike tour, and started in 1999, and it just took off from there. We have our famous Paris Day bike tour, which gives you a great overview of the city. You see all the main monuments, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Place de la Concorde, stop for lunch in the Tuileries Gardens, which is really just a beautiful place. And we also have a complimentary night bike tour that takes you into the heart of the city, the Latin Quarter, Notre Dame, the Conciergerie, where Paris started. And those two tours together give people a great overview of the city.
I love also the fact that you take bikes outside the city to Versailles, which, I mean, the gardens of Versailles, that's so beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. Versailles is our most popular tour without question. And we also do a tour to Monet's Gardens, which is in Giverny, just about an hour north of Paris.
That's probably nice in like late summer when everything's in bloom.
Yeah, you really have to get there when the flowers are in bloom, and you can see the lily pads, and you can see the inspiration from Monet's water lily series.
And when people rent the bikes, do they always rent them as a group so they can go places, or can you come here and rent your own bike, or how does it work?
No, actually, most people just, when they want to rent bikes, they can just come here individually, and they can rent the bike for a couple hours or for a day or even a couple days. And it's really easy to bike around Paris. The mayor of Paris is continuing to add in bike lanes just to make it easier for the Parisians and tourists.
Nice.
Yeah.
The idea of discovering Paris on a bicycle is romantic and timeless. One can imagine seeing the city this way 100 years ago. But Fat Tire tours are up to date as well. They even offer Segway tours for those who would rather not pedal their way around town. But today they've been unpacking these brand new 3-speed bicycles, so Sadie set me up with a shiny red bike to keep exploring.
All right, so why don't you give it a try?
Sure, thank you. Oh yeah, nice bike. At only €4 an hour or €25 for a full 24-hour day, I can't think of a faster or more efficient way to get around this amazing city. When the weather is right, rolling along with the breeze in your face is a Parisian memory that you'll hold on to for a long, long time. Now that I've got my wheels, let's zip back over to the shadow of the Eiffel Tower and the gorgeous historic park that stretches out beyond the dizzying metal monument. This park is the Champ de Mars. I love cycling around the Champ de Mars, especially because this is where the cavalry used to practice. All those soldiers on horseback studying at the École Militaire behind me. In fact, during the 19th century, this is where the ladies would come to watch the soldiers and the officers rehearsing their military maneuvers. Every now and then, of course, there would be a certain amount of handkerchief dropping going on in the gardens. But these days, most people come here to admire the Eiffel Tower and take pictures of themselves in this beautiful garden. Although you probably won't see anyone on horseback today, the long, thin Champ de Mars, flanked by rows of trees and crossed by crushed stone paths, is perfect for walking or riding a bike. If you feel like taking a break, there are plenty of park benches, great for people watching or an impromptu picnic. Once, the Champ de Mars was the preferred site for hot air balloonists as they experimented with their lighter-than-air craft in the 1700s and 1800s. Let me show you over to a little corner of the Champ with a place that is very popular among the younger visitors to the park. This is one of the old traditional puppet theaters in Paris behind me. Traditionally, the parks in Paris have guignol puppet theaters for the kids. Most of them are open air, but the one in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower here in the Champ de Mars is actually enclosed, so you can come any time of year, whatever the weather, and give your kids a chance to relax, enjoy a 45-minute really charming puppet show, and recover a little bit from the stress of having to walk up the stairs of the Eiffel Tower. Now, it only opens in the mid-afternoon, so if you're in the park, listen for an old-fashioned school bell. That tells you the puppet show is about to start. This is one of the largest of the Guignol puppet theaters in Paris, with 200 seats for the little ones. And the noise level can get up pretty high in here with even a small group of excited children in their seats when Guignol, the French version of Punch and Judy, hits the stage.
Je n'ai plus le temps de jouer, mon petit chien, aujourd'hui. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Hein? Il y a quelqu'un? Si vous me l'avez... Non mais, vous allez faire! Et voilà, bravo!
This is also one of the oldest puppet theaters in the city. Over its 125 years in operation, the theater has amassed a collection of over 600 puppets and 200 background pieces. The enthusiastic performers sometimes take on multiple roles as they stage puppet productions of classics like Sleeping Beauty, Jack and the Beanstalk, and Snow White.
Revenez donc nous voir avec vos petits amis, car pour vous amuser, nous sommes toujours ici. Au revoir et à très bientôt. Au revoir, à bientôt. Merci, Majesté. Mais je vous en prie, venez, je vous accompagne.
This part of the performance is over, but I have lots more to explore around Bir Hakeim Metro as soon as we come back. We're in daring, creative, beautiful Paris. And we're checking out the amazing things you'll find when you get off the metro at Bir Hakeim station. Let's continue our exploration of the Champ de Mars as it stretches out away from the dizzying heights of the Eiffel Tower towards the École Militaire. With the military school at one end and the iconic Eiffel Tower at the other, the Champ de Mars is a powerful statement on the might and influence of the French state. But there is another installation here, one that inspires more peaceful thoughts. Here at the foot of the Champ de Mars, symbolically located in front of the main military school of France, is the Mur de la Paix, the Peace Wall, which was installed to celebrate the millennium in 2000 and was supposed to be temporary, but many people hope that it remains to remind visitors here of world peace. The Wall for Peace was designed by artist Clara Halter and architect Jean-Michel Wilmotte. Clara Halter is known for her other peace-themed installations in other cities, including the Peace Tower in St. Petersburg and the Gates of Peace in Hiroshima. Rather than a wall built to separate and exclude, this wall strives to bring all the people of the world together in the spirit of a simple but powerful message: peace. The word peace is inscribed in 49 different languages on the monument. Visitors to the Wall for Peace can also make their own addition to the message. There are several touchscreens built into the installation on which people can contribute messages of peace. Inspired by the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, there are slots in the Wall of Peace into which handwritten notes can be deposited. Even with its loving and seemingly unifying message, the Wall for Peace has suffered several incidents of vandalism since it was installed at the turn of the millennium. Despite these senseless acts, the Monument for Peace that was intended to stand here for only 4 months continues to grace this symbolic place on the historic Champ de Mars, a park named for Mars, the Roman god of war. While we're on the subject of peace and its opposite, war, let's continue on away from the Eiffel Tower to the far end of the Champ de Mars and the stunning building where France has trained its soldiers for centuries. This École Militaire was the brainchild of Madame Pompadour, the mistress of Louis XV, and she paid for the building by having Louis levy a tax on playing cards. This school is still the top military academy of France. Louis laid the first stone of the academic building in 1769, and training began 4 years later. A young cadet named Napoleon trained here and joined an artillery regiment upon graduating because he was too short for the cavalry. The original main building is adorned with beautifully rendered statues and decorative elements. Perhaps not surprisingly, most of them are a military theme. The original buildings have been added to, and over the years, the École Militaire has taken on vast proportions while still honoring the rich history of the French military and the generations that have served their country. While you're visiting the Champ de Mars, there is so much to see, but be sure to stop at this sculpture by Yvan Temard. It was put up in 1989 to commemorate the bicentennial of the French Revolution. And it's a really interesting sculpture because it references the temples of reason that were put up during the Revolution to sweep aside the Catholic Church and to commemorate the idea that people were rational beings. The Monument to the Rights of Man, as it's called, takes its inspiration largely from Egyptian temples, though it also includes several Masonic symbols, as well as some resemblance to ancient Jewish temples. There are bronze figures surrounding the main stone structure. Together, the elements of this work create a fascinating and varied work that continues to reveal interesting details the more time you spend here. Children in particular seem very drawn to the installation and enjoy running and playing around the base of the sculpture. Even canine Parisians seem to appreciate the complex and intricate piece. The other interesting thing to notice about this sculpture is that the artist included a lot of references to the idea of the printing press. He used some printing plates and references to the Declaration of the Rights of Man, how the word got out to the people about the French Revolution. And to bring it forward into the bicentennial year of 1989, he also included all kinds of events from 1989 in these headlines of newspapers and a little newspaper hat on the boy here. So in his hat, there's references to the Berlin Wall coming down in 1989, to Tiananmen Square, all kinds of political and historically important events from the year. Don't be shy to get really up close and personal with this work of art when you come to visit. The Monument to the Rights of Man contains surprises hidden deep within its central structure. If you get your eye right up to the triangle-shaped holes in the face of the piece and peer inside, you'll find small bronze reliefs visible only through these small portals on the outside. We've seen plenty of big things today as we explore around the Champ de Mars after hopping off the metro at Bir Hakeim. But not everything around here is big, even if it's named that way. Follow me just a little way off the Champ, and I'll show you a sweet, small corner of Paris named Le Gros Caillou, which means the big pebble.
The nice thing about the neighborhood of the Gros Caillou is how calm it is. The little streets alongside the Champ de Mars have very few tourists, and it's a real local neighborhood. Very charming.
This largely residential part of the 7th arrondissement is named after a large rock, now removed, which was once used as a landmark to separate lands owned by two 17th century abbeys. In the 19th century, there was an enormous tobacco factory here, which employed more than 1,000 workers while belching out thick smoke that blanketed the neighborhood. But today, the air is far fresher, and it's a pleasure to explore the charming, narrow streets of this little piece of old Paris. You'll find a few great places to eat around here, including Au Gros Caillou, which serves a delicious onion soup and steak with fried potatoes. Rents in this part of town are astronomical, but for a quiet bike or stroll just minutes from the busy tourist hotspots on the Champ de Mars, this Gros Caillou neighborhood is well worth a detour. And I've got lots more for you to see nearby coming up right after this. We're in fabulous, frenetic, fashionable Paris, and we've been looking at some of the amazing things around the Bir Hakeim metro station. I'm going to lock my rental bike up for a while and continue on foot to the next place I'd like to show you, a charming little street called Rue Claire. Here at the top of Rue Claire is Saint-Pierre du Gros Caillou. St. Peter is always associated with a rock, so it's appropriate that the church is named for the Gros Caillou of the neighborhood. The steps are actually also a nice place to sit and enjoy a sandwich or just take in the sun in nice weather. There was a chapel built on this site back in 1738, and the construction of a proper church was begun some 40 years later, only to be demolished during the Revolution, when the site was briefly used as a quarry. The present church was built at the beginning of the 1800s and was consecrated on May 1st, 1830. During the Second Empire, the neighborhood surrounding Saint-Pierre du Gros Caillou went through many changes, and the parish church changed as well, undergoing a series of additions, demolitions, and renovations. More recently, the bell tower was rebuilt and fitted with 4 new bells, 2 of which were forged in Algeria. An original church bell was saved and is on display inside St. Pierre's. The church holds services 5 times on Sunday and is open to visitors weekdays from 8:30 in the morning until 7 p.m. Let's step just outside of quiet St. Pierre's Church and onto the busy cobblestone Rue Claire. Don't get too distracted by the wonderful shops and cafes, because this largely pedestrian street also allows vehicle traffic, so stay alert as you stroll. The Rue Claire is a wonderful little market street, tucked in this neighborhood on the far side of the Eiffel Tower. It's a perfect place to buy food or fresh flowers for your hotel room, or you can visit some of the specialty shops that have been here for a very long time. For example, on Rue Claire, there's the Famille Marie, which has been selling honey and other bee products for a very long time indeed. Or facing it on Rue Claire, there's the wonderful Davoli, which is an Italian deli that's been here on this market street for generations. Let's go in and check it out. I've brought you to see Tivoli at a quiet pause in the day because during the lunch rush, it's an absolute zoo in here, as lucky locals and visitors in the know clamor for the amazing variety of fresh and delicious food, all with a distinctly Italian flair that you'll find only in this deli. What's lovely about shopping at Tivoli is that this shop has been in the same family for 4 generations. Since 1913, Tivoli's been serving Italian-inspired food to Parisians. It's especially wonderful for visitors to come here and get food for picnics and ready-prepared meals. Their cold salads and quiches are fabulous. But you can also get presents here to take home with you. For example, Tivoli imports its own organic olive oil from Sicily, and it sells bottles here, along with all kinds of other antipastas and treats. Tivoli also has its own brand of sauces and marinated vegetables you can take away in jars, along with an absolute cornucopia of colorful and delicious items that change with the seasons and holidays, so you just have to keep coming back. My favorite thing about Tivoli is their wonderful cheese selection, because I love Italian cheeses, especially because here they have them according to season. In the spring, there's the fabulous burrata, which is a soft mozzarella that you actually cut open and eat with a spoon. Along with Italian specialties like panettone and prosciutto, you can even pick up a bottle of wine with your picnic items at Tivoli and complete the experience. All you'll need is a quiet spot somewhere and a blanket. But quiet spots are a little hard to come by in this area around Bir Hakeim Metro, with all its popular tourist attractions and bustling neighborhood streets. Fortunately, I know a place that's just a little out of the way, that's perfect for a moment of peace and quiet and a picnic lunch. From the Bir Hakeim metro station, cross the roundabout and follow the bicycle trail that goes under the elevated metro line across the river. Once you're about halfway across, keep an eye out for the signs to the Allée des Cygnes. The Allée des Cygnes, or Swan Alley, used to be popular with fishermen. In fact, writer Ernest Hemingway describes fishing off this island in the 1920s. The island is an artificial one formed in the 1820s to shelter the nearby Seine port of Grenelle. It's a mere 850 meters long and 11 meters wide, and the walkway named Allée des Cygnes runs its length. Lined with trees and surrounded by water, the tiny, narrow island is an oasis in the middle of busy Paris, even if the swans that gave the island its name are no longer here. When you visit the Allée des Cygnes, be sure to venture out to both ends of the man-made island. On the eastern tip, you'll find the gorgeous work of sculpture entitled La France Renaissante, or France Reborn. The bronze statue of a figure on horseback is the work of Holger Wiederkensch and was gifted to Paris by the Danish in 1930. At the other end of Ile des Cygnes, you'll find something you may not have expected to see in Paris. A 22-meter or 1/4 scale version of the Statue of Liberty by Frederick Bartholdi. This smaller version of Lady Liberty faces west towards New York, and the full-size version, which was given to the United States by France as a gift of international friendship. The New York statue was dedicated in 1886, while this smaller one in Paris was inaugurated in 1889. Close to everything and yet away from it all, the Allée des Cygnes is a must-see when you're in the Metro Bir Hakeim area. And there's so much more for you to see when we come back. We're in the most memorable city on the planet, Paris. And we've been visiting the area around the Bir Hakeim metro station. Once this station was named for the Grenelle port here on the Seine. And it's also known as the Tour Eiffel station for its proximity to the famous tower. And as we learned earlier, the current name is in honor of the site of the first battle by the Free French Army in Libya during World War II. But there's another connection between this area and North Africa, the Algerian War Memorial on the walkway along the Seine between the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame. Behind me, the names scroll past of the soldiers killed during the Algerian War, which France waged in North Africa for a decade in the middle of the 20th century. The French colonial struggle to maintain control of Algeria and Tunis lasted from 1952 until 1962. This war between French forces and Algerian independence forces ultimately led to the decolonization of Algeria. But the war involved many different movements and factions and was marred by the use of torture on both sides, acts of terrorism against civilians, and horrible atrocities. While exact numbers of the human toll of this war are impossible to say, estimates of the number of dead range from 350,000 to 1.5 million. French military sources number their dead at over 25,000. The stark, modern memorial to the French who died in the war has no vegetation surrounding it, only a patch of earth and sand in front of the scrolling names in the colors of France. There is also a small marker here which honors civilians killed in the Oran massacre at the end of this war. Just downriver from the Eiffel Tower, there's a memorial to a particularly grim episode during the Nazi extermination of Jews, which occurred during the occupation. This is the Veldiv Memorial. Veldiv is shortened from the French Vélodrome d'hiver, or the Winter Velodrome, which once stood near here. The building that housed the indoor bicycle racetrack of Paris was used for a much darker purpose on the 16th and 17th of July, 1942. These were the dates of a mass arrest and roundup of French Jewish men, women, and children. Over 10,000 people were arrested by the French police and held temporarily in the Velodrome before being sent to Nazi death camps. Most of the victims of this mass roundup were killed in Auschwitz. Polish sculptor Walter Spitzer, whose parents survived Auschwitz, created this bronze sculpture of a group of Jews huddled together on the curved surface of the bicycle track as a memorial to this dark chapter in the history of France and Paris. The words on the monument read, "The French Republic, in homage to the victims of racist and anti-Semitic persecutions and of crimes against humanity committed under the authority of the so-called government of the State of France, never forget." French President François Mitterrand commissioned the work and it was inaugurated in 1994. The memorials around Bir Hakeim station in Paris speak of difficult times in the history of this amazing city, and they help us to remember the dark times along with the brightness of Paris. This neighborhood isn't only about monuments and memorials. There's also a lot of people who live here in the beautiful residential buildings, like this gorgeous old house I want to show you at number 29 Avenue Rapp. This is the most gorgeous building on Avenue Rapp. It's an Art Nouveau masterpiece by architect Jules Lavriat. The detail is exquisite. The ceramics that cover the facade of this stunning, beautiful home are all the work of Alexandre Bigot. Bigot was originally a chemistry and science teacher. He developed a great love of ceramics after being exposed to Chinese porcelain on display in Paris for the 1889 World Exhibition. His background in chemistry helped him create amazing glazes with an astonishing array of colors and finishes. Architect Jules Lavriotte incorporated a great deal of Bigot's ceramics into the lavish number 29 Avenue Rapp. The building won the prestigious Concours des Façades, or facade contest, held by the city of Paris in 1901. One aspect of this building that's nice is the detail above the door. There's actually a beautiful woman in a fox fur collar, very chic Belle Epoque outfit. And this is actually a portrait of the architect's wife. It's Mrs. Lavriotte. For fans of over-the-top Art Nouveau buildings, this is a great block to visit, because just around the corner is a small dead-end street called Square Rapp. This same architect, Jules Lavriotte, created this building in 1899, and he actually lived in an upper apartment here while dreaming up his next Art Nouveau masterpiece. Let's carry on south on Avenue Rapp and take a left on Saint-Dominique, where I'd like to show you a bit of old plumbing right after this. We're exploring the city of light, Paris, and this time we've been looking around the historic Bir Hakeim metro station. After a busy day taking in some of the most iconic sights in this amazing city, I've saved a feast or two for last. This is the Fontaine de Mars here on Saint-Dominique. It's been here a very long time to offer fresh water to people who live here. Now, of course, it's mostly scenic, lovely place for dinner. You'll find this neoclassic water fountain nestled in a charming little arcaded square just off the main street. In 1808, it was built as a practical source for drinking water by engineer François-Jean Barral, who built many Parisian fountains. The bas-relief sculptures on the fountain depict Mars, the god of war, and Hygeia, the goddess of health and daughter of the god of medicine. When you visit the fountain, look for this small plaque near ground level. It represents the high water mark from the Great Paris Flood of 1910. Also, take a peek into the window of the cafe next door named for the Fontaine de Mars. It became somewhat famous after a visit from US President Obama and his wife in 2009. We probably won't be bumping into the Obamas tonight, but I've made an early dinner reservation just on the other side of the fountain at my favorite, Les Fables de la Fontaine, a fabulous top-notch French seafood restaurant. To start off, I've been brought bread, 2 different kinds, buckwheat, which is very appropriate because buckwheat grows near the sea in France, and this is a seafood restaurant. And with the bread, I've got butter with seaweed mixed into it, so it's all very thematic here. If you think that seaweed butter is a fancy touch, just wait until you get a look at the appetizer. Wow. This is a really complex dish. It's fabulous. This is a wonderful new take on a really traditional bouillabaisse from the Mediterranean, in that the flavors are very much like a bouillabaisse. It starts with sea urchin in this case, and it's topped with a houille with saffron, and these are all flavors that are really traditional in Marseille on the Mediterranean, but in this case it's been given a really special twist by the chef. That's delicious. Really wonderful. It's really subtle. The saffron is just enough. It's really lovely. Lovely, cool dish. For my main course, I've asked for the crispy langoustine rolls, served with lettuce hearts and Caesar dressing with some gorgeous dipping sauces. It's fabulous. I'm gonna try the citrus first. Really delicious, wonderful langoustine. Wow. That was a lovely day in the Bir Hakeim neighborhood, exploring the Champ de Mars by bike, looking at the Eiffel Tower, and of course eating wonderful food. Let's see what we can get up to next time on Paris Next Stop.